Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm Annie, this is Stanley, and we're here to talk about books. Now, regular viewers will notice that Stanley has yet another new scarf. I've got back into crafting in a big way, which makes me very happy, but I'm not sure about this one. Stanley's never going to complain because he's amazing, but perhaps you could let me know in the comments what you think, whether it should stay in the rota of Stanley's neckwear or whether we should fire it into the sun, or, you know, take it to a charity shop or something, perhaps less dramatic. Okay, so we are here today to talk about the books that I have read in October. And anyone who's been following my TBR videos will know that I had The Humans by Matt Haig on the TBR for the third month in a row. And I tried it. I read some of it at least, but if you want to find out what I thought about it, I'm not going to be talking about it in this video because I did it as part of my Read It or Yeet It challenge. So you'll just have to wait and check out that video when it comes out later in the month to see what I thought of The Humans by Matt Haig, which I finally got round to giving a try. In terms of the non-Read It or Yeet It books for this month, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. Had a very good start to the month and a very good end to the month, and it got a bit rocky somewhere in the middle. I had a bit of a reading slump this month, which you will not believe me when I go through how many books I actually got through. But for me, I really did struggle partway through the month with some of the books. I had a couple of DNFs, but we'll get to that. In the meantime, let's make some tea. So, exciting times in the sad windowless kitchen, because there's new tea. Dave did an excellent job of selecting tea choices for my birthday. We have mango oolong, nut oolong, plum oolong, and white and green dragon fruit, all of which sound amazing, and I am looking forward to trying them out. But first of all, got to put them in the tea drawers. Okay, so that's looking a little bit healthier. Let's see what we're going to get. We've got 19 drawers full now, so I'm going to use D20 and ignore it if I get 20. Oh, I want one of the new ones, but the die is my master. 1. Okay. No new birthday tea for me today. Black and green sunflower and pineapple, though. Perfectly lovely choice. I think I'm going to have to buy myself some more tea as well, because I've still got 2 empty drawers. Some of the others are getting a bit thin on the ground. But we've got plenty for today. Good old past me has already boiled the kettle. So, black and green, sunflower and pineapple. Oh, a little bit more. There we go. Lovely stuff. So, now we've got our tea in one of my favourite teapot and cup combinations, which actually works quite well with Stanley's scarf with the kind of orange. Anyway, let's move on. The first book that I read in October was one I started in September when I thought I was going to have time to read another book in September, and it turned out I didn't, because this one took me a little while to read. I read The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon. And this I read for the HRCYED Hardest Reading Challenge You'll Ever Do prompts for the Jewish Heritage Month, and the All the Hundreds, which is read a book for each 100 pages. So this was the 600s because it's quite a chonker. And this was great. It's about 2 young Jewish men who start writing comics in the late 1930s and throughout the Second World War, and various aspects of their life in New York and how the war affects them. and the relationships that they have. Exactly my kind of book. Absolutely brilliant. Way better than I was expecting it to be. Apart from, I have to say, about 50 pages right around the midway point, which jumped to part of the war and were so grim, so unpleasant, so completely out of keeping with the rest of the book that I nearly DNF'd it multiple times during just those 50 pages. And it dropped it from being an absolute no-brainer of a 5-star read. Although the ending was also felt a bit abrupt and a bit too neat for me. But otherwise, yeah, family saga kind of story, lots of involved interpersonal relationships, really, really interesting about the comic book industry. Apart from that section in the middle, absolutely loved it. 4.5 stars. Next up is Among the Burning Flowers by Samantha Shannon, which was from my TBR prompt jar of buying something from my wish list. And it was also supposed to fulfill the September new releases for HRCYED. But unfortunately didn't go according to plan. I was really excited when I saw that there was a new installment in this series because I loved Prior of the Orange Tree, I loved A Day of Fallen Night, and this was a novella, and I thought, fantastic, short story in the Roots of Chaos series, what could go wrong? And I think it's partly because it's been a long time since I have visited this world, and it is a very complicated world. And it's partly because I was listening to it, and I have been complaining for a while about struggling a little bit with audiobooks. I think that's coming to an end now, which is great. I am getting on better with my brain and audiobooks, which is a big relief. But this one kind of fell still in the problematic part of that period. And it was just a load of names and a load of places and a load of historical background that I couldn't remember the significance of. And I just couldn't do it. I didn't get very far at all, unfortunately. So I may revisit this another time in text form. But yeah, this unfortunately was a DNF. So the next audiobook that I moved on to was Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson, which had been on my radar for a little while, and I was looking for something to fulfill the trilogy section of the series Staircase for HRCYED, where you have to read a whole trilogy, and have been trying to start this square for a while and not managing it. And unfortunately, this didn't manage to fulfill that either, because by the time I got to the end of this book, I did not want to carry on with the series. But I was able to use it for the trans section of the queer alphabet, and also the magic users section of the spooky creatures square, because this is about Her Majesty's Royal Coven, which is a group of witches who serve the UK government. It took me by surprise, because for something with a civil service pun in the title, because it's a riff on HMRC, which is Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs in real life, I thought it was going to be kind of comic, a bit light-hearted, a bit silly. And I also thought, for some reason, it was going to be historical, but it's not. It's present day. And it's not light and silly at all. It was interesting. It's got a lot of interesting politics in it. There's a lot of good interpersonal relationships. I liked the characters a lot, the group of witches. And there was an interesting storyline to do with a trans teenager, and whether she could be allowed to join a witch's coven rather than having to be a warlock, because it's very sort of gender segregated in this world with magic use. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. And there was a prophecy that the teenager in question was going to bring about the end of the world and all of this kind of stuff. But it was a bit dark for me. I don't necessarily mind dark stories, but this one just felt a little bit dreary. And by the time I got to the end of the book, which I did overall enjoy this one, I gave it 3.5 stars, but I just didn't want to carry on with the rest of the series and see all of the horrible things happen to these characters. So didn't work out for the series Staircase, unfortunately. But as I said, 3.5 stars. Next up is The Instrumentalist by Harriet Constable, which was doing quite a lot of heavy lifting on the readathon front because I used it for the Adventures in Eldia Magical Readathon map prompt of a book with a cover that was my favourite colour. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous blue. Very happy with that. It's also helping me with the maker quote for HRCYED. I picked Fear is the Price of Our Instrument, which is Hannibal Lecter in Red Dragon. So this fulfills instrument for my quote. And also the Become the Avatar square, where you have to do either the titles, Earth, Air, Fire and Water in the titles of books, or those things on the covers. I'm doing both because why not be completist? And this is fulfilling water. So yeah, quite a lot of pressure on this book. And luckily I did enjoy it. It's fascinating. It's one of those ones where someone has taken a little gap in history or a part of history where something is known but not a huge amount about it, and has kind of extrapolated the story. So it's set in 1704, early 1700s in Naples? No, Venice. No, Venice. Italy. Somewhere in Italy. Canals, probably Venice. Anyway, in an orphanage where Vivaldi is the musical director, and there is a famous orchestra made up of the best musicians among the orphan girls in the institution. And the idea is that there was one particular girl at that time called Anna Maria, and she is a real person, and she became a very respected violinist. But the suggestion is also that some of the girls in the orchestra helped Vivaldi with his composing, and he composed the Four Seasons during this period. So it's all about that. I did enjoy it. It was very interesting, but it was a bit rough because it's an awful lot about abuse of power, patriarchy, mistreatment of young women. And yes, there's an awful lot of that in media, and as there should be. It's important those stories are told, but I am, as I have said before, getting a little bit wary of female characters in books being horribly abused. But it was a good one. It was interesting. Didn't paint Vivaldi in a very good light at all. But yeah, I would recommend it if you are interested in that period of history and you don't mind Vivaldi getting a bit trashed. But yes, interesting stuff. And I do like it when people do this, kind of extrapolate what might have happened in gaps in history, particularly to do with stories about women. 3.5 stars. Next up, I picked another audiobook to fulfill the new releases square for HRCYED for September, and I picked Making History by KJ Parker, which is a novella. It was pretty short, but it was interesting. It's about a fantasy world where the leader is trying to, how to describe this? Trying to massage history, shall we say, by supposedly discovering an ancient city that would reveal certain things about the history between his realm and the realm next door, which might help in dominating them and increasing his power in the area. And it tells the story of the 12 historians and geologists and scientists of various stripes that he picks from the university to basically create this city, which can then be so-called discovered. And it's very weird. It's very odd in tone. It's quite dry, but I really enjoyed it. There was some really interesting involvement of female characters in this, where I thought there weren't going to be any, because all of the scientists and historians that have been inveigled into this plot are men. But there were some very interesting female characters in the end. For such a short book, it gets very convoluted and quite intricate as it goes along. There were some aspects of it that I wasn't so keen on. There was one section where the narrator actually says, oh, I'm just going to be really boring and go into lots of detail about stuff that you're probably not interested in for a while. So if you like, you can just skip ahead until I've got through this bit, which was an odd choice for a book, but anyway, but it did get very fun and interesting towards the end, and I really enjoyed the ending in particular. So this one also got 3.5 stars. Next up, a Chilean 19th century book called Martin Rivas by Alberto Blest Gana, which came up because the HRCYED secret prompt for October was to read a book which had a first and last name in the title, and I did not have anything that fulfilled that, so I had to scrabble around and try and find something. And I also needed something that would fulfill the South America aspect of the Around the World Square, so I picked this. And yeah, I tend to like 19th century literature, and this was a pretty good example of that. It was about the marriage market. It was about children not wanting to do what their parents expect of them in terms of their career and their marriage prospects. It was about a young man called Martin who comes to a fairly well-off family after his father dies and is taken in by them. And works as an assistant to the father in the family and falls in love with the daughter and various people that he meets and different friends of hers and of his and their romantic entanglements. It was maybe a little bit long. It dragged a little bit somewhere along the way, but overall I enjoyed it. It was kind of not quite a comedy of manners, but quite light and fun and interesting about an area of the world that I didn't know a huge amount about. But yeah, it was enjoyable overall. And I gave it 3 stars. Next up was another audiobook, Miss Percy's Definitive Guide to the Restoration of Dragons, which is the last in the Miss Percy Guide series by Quenby Olson, which I have been enjoying earlier this year. And I have used this for the exotic animals space on the Animals Are Better square for HRCYED. It does say in the FAQ that fantasy animals are allowed, so I'm using it for that because it is otherwise a very real Victorian setting in Victorian England and Wales, but there are dragons which the protagonist kind of has as pets. So yes, I'm using it for that. And I'm also using it for the make a quote for the in fear is the price of our instruments. So Miss Percy's Definitive Guide to the Restoration of Dragons helped me out there. This one would have been great for the series Staircase trilogy, but I read the first one before I knew HRCYED was a thing, so it doesn't count, sadly. I enjoyed this. It's fun to get back to this world and these characters. Can't say a huge amount about the plot because it is the third in a series. It did fall down a little bit like the second one did, where there was an awful lot of faffing around. They had to go somewhere and it was really urgent that they get there. So they took a really long time to travel and then stopped off somewhere for a week in the middle. And then when they got where they were going, they also didn't do anything to do with sorting out the plot for a very, very long time until everything suddenly came to a head at the end. So, you know, and not the best series in the world, but I really enjoyed it. It was fun. It was light. I really like the romance in this. Both of the romantic partners in this are in their 40s, which I always enjoy because I'm in my 40s. So it's nice sometimes to see a romance between slightly older people. They're not all sort of teenagers and early 20s. So I really enjoyed that. And I thought that the conclusion of the story was good for the end of the series. So I'm glad I finished it. So 3.5 stars for that one. Then I had 2 quite unexpected reads in a row, which I really enjoyed both of. The Bone Setter's Daughter by Amy Tan, which has been on the list for a while, and I pulled a prompt out of my prompt jar to have a book with plants on the cover, and I picked this one, and I'm really glad I did because it was very different to what I expected. For HRCYED, it's a BIPOC author and also a part of the awards season square because this was nominated for an award. Didn't win it, but I think it was a semi-finalist. This is about a woman called Ruth who grows up in America with a Chinese mother, and it's all about their relationship and Ruth's relationship with her partner and her partner's children. And it's also about the mother growing up in China in the 1930s, because Ruth discovers a manuscript that her mother has written as a memoir because she's starting to lose her memory, and she was worried about losing all of the stories from her childhood. So she wrote this memoir. It had a bit of an abrupt kind of shift partway through. The whole of the first half was all about Ruth in the modern day and her dealing with things. Whilst our backgrounds are very different, I related really strongly to Ruth as a character in terms of how she reacts to things and some of her attitudes to things. So I really connected to her quite strongly. And then just over halfway through, it flips and we get the whole of the memoir narrative. And I think it would have probably been better if it had been one of those where it had been intercut. So it had gone from the modern day to the past and back again throughout the book and kind of built up that way. But we just get the half of the book with Ruth's story and then the half of the book with her mother's story and then a conclusion at the end. The ending was unexpected. In some ways, it didn't go where I thought it was going to go. I wasn't sure what kind of an ending we were going to get, but I was very happy with the ending. And I really enjoyed this, and I'm glad I finally picked it up off the shelf because I wasn't keen to read this, and it turned out to be really good, and I gave it 4 stars. Next up, we have True Biz by Sarah Novich, which is interesting how this came into my possession because it fulfilled the Disability Pride Month square for HRCYED and also the 2022, I think, bit for the last 10 years, where you have to read a book published in each of the last 10 years. And I was looking around online for books with disability representation in them and came across this mentioned somewhere. And then I found it in a charity shop round the corner from my house. Never heard of it before in my life. And then there it was on the shelf. So I got it as part of 3 books for £1, I think. Very, very well worth it. It's not in fantastic condition. Some of the pages are kind of coming out. But it was very well worth a read. I really enjoyed this. It's set in Ohio and it's about a school for deaf children. And there's an awful lot in it about deaf culture and politics and societal attitudes and adjustments for people with hearing disabilities. It follows various people. The headmistress of the school, who is a child of deaf parents, so she is hearing, but she does know sign language, and she teaches a class about deaf history and deaf culture. And it has these kind of inserts of handouts from her course or little bits of history or information about sign language or deaf culture, which I thought were a little bit clunky because they don't really all work as handouts for her course, so it doesn't really follow through as to why they're there. All of the information was very interesting, but I thought that the bits that were embedded in the narrative and shown to us as part of the characters' lives were much, much better done than the kind of inserts. And yeah, it was fascinating. It was a little bit soapboxy, but that was very much the point. It's quite political, but it was quite good to be made aware of some of the issues around that. And I gave this 4.5 stars. Next up is another audiobook, which I am really seriously hoping, after a few false starts, is definitely going to fulfill the series staircase trilogy aspect of HRCYED for me. And that was Key of Light by Nora Roberts. I'm very much looking forward to the conclusion of her Lost Brides series, which is coming out in November. And while I was waiting for that, I thought, why not go back and listen to a different paranormal fantasy trilogy from her. So this one fulfills, hopefully, the first set or section of the trilogy square. And also, what else is it? House pets. House pets I've been struggling with. And this has a really awesome dog called Mo. I think he's a Newfoundland. He's giant and very exuberant, and takes up quite a lot of the story, and he's great. But yes, this is a modern day set with a magical twist to it, much like a lot of Nora Roberts' trilogies that I have read. And it is very, very similar in a lot of ways to The Lost Brides, because we have a young woman who is a creative and really wants to have her own business in the creative field. And she is awarded some kind of money from a mysterious source. There's a big house on the hill that has magical aspects to it and a mystery, and she has a quest that she's got to fulfill within a set timeline. And she meets a big hunky guy who has an awesome dog. And yeah, so it's very, very similar to The Lost Brides, but I really enjoyed it. I mean, it does also have one of the downsides of The Lost Brides, where things will happen to one of the characters and they will call together the group of other characters and then explain to them what happened. And you're like, well, we were there, so we don't need you to tell us what happened because we saw it when it happened. It's not like high literature or anything, but I really enjoyed it. The romance aspects were a bit iffy. There are 3 women, and each of them is going to have the focus in one of the books, and they're going to have their section of the romance. And all the guys are absolutely terrible. There's surprise kissing. There's seeing no as a challenge just to persevere and harass people. They're really bad. And the way they talk about the women, there's insta love of ridiculous proportions. You know, one of them falls in love with one of the women because she looks like somebody in a painting he owns. It's just, the romance is ridiculous. But I did enjoy how it played out in this book to begin with. I'm a little bit more uncertain about some of the others, but it's just really fun. I love the found family aspect. I like all of the stuff to do with writing and painting and artistic pursuits. As I said, the dog was great. I don't think I'm going to have any trouble finishing this trilogy for the Trilogy Square. And I gave this 4.5 stars because I just really enjoyed it. And then in a very different vein, anybody who has seen my recent November TBR video will know that I asked my husband Dave to pick 3 numbers from 1 to 52 that would correspond to the unread books on my shelf. And he picked The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, and my reaction to that in the video is quite amusing. Because I ran out of books to read from my October TBR, I thought I'd give myself a jump start on November because I have a lot of books to read in November. I mean, it's not a competition. It's not mandatory that I get through them all, but I thought I'd give myself a head start and start this a little bit early. And I finished it before the end of October, so it's coming into this video instead of the next one. And my word, what can I say about this book? I mean, I was going to say on paper, it's quite a dreary story about terrible people mostly doing terrible things, taking vast amounts of drugs in a way that is incredibly unhealthy. It's about terrible parents. It's about terrible teenagers. It's about people growing up affected by terrible things that happen to them. But there's something about it, and I can't really put my finger on it. I mean, the emotional honesty is definitely a thing. The actual writing in and of itself, Donna Tartt's writing is very good. I mean, I knew that from The Secret History. But I don't know, the first half of this book in particular, I was thinking this is going to be a contender for my best book of the year. And an absolute no-brainer on the 5-star reads. The second half, there was a bit of a time jump. It was a bit jarring. I wasn't entirely sure. I was convinced by where the story went, and it dragged a little bit. But then the end, the last 10 pages is basically the narrator of the book explaining what the book is about and what message and impact we're supposed to have taken from it. And whilst I was thinking, if you think you need to do that with 10 pages at the end of your book, you haven't written a very good book. But it was also possibly 10 of the best pages I've ever read in a book ever. And it totally swung me back round to this being a contender for my best book of the year. It has made me reconsider my thoughts about ratings, actually, because it's not a perfect book by any stretch of the imagination. But, and I don't think I could unreservedly recommend it to anybody that I know. Perfect, far from it. 5 stars, no question. I have to give it 5 stars. I am so glad that Dave picked the number that corresponded to this book, because otherwise this was probably going to sit on the shelf forever and I never would have got around to reading it. And it was phenomenal. I think it's phenomenal. 5 stars. Perfect end to the month. I think I'm still processing the day after having finished it. So there you go. That's my books for October. Going into November, very exciting. I've got a new readathon challenge for November. Dungeons and Book Dragons readathon by, I think, the Ivy Goddess. And I am looking forward to taking part in that. And I've also got HRCYED still going on. There's another couple of prompts on the Adventures in Eldian map. So yeah, still very much enjoying my reading. Dave's going away for the second half of November and the first week of December, so I'm hoping that I'm going to have lots of time to do extra reading. And yeah, the November TBR may shift around a bit depending on the challenge prompts that come up throughout November. But yes, there we go. That was my October reading. Some amazing successes, some not so amazing DNFs, but a lot of varied and interesting books along the way. And don't forget to leave me a comment to let me know what you think of Stanley's entrelac scarf and whether he should keep it in his wardrobe or relinquish it to someone else who might prefer it. And I will see you in another video very soon. Bye for now.